Welcome, everyone, to the Rainmaker Report. This is Andy Thompson, and here are 3 late-breaking cybersecurity stories that you need to know about. So first up, Anthropic just admitted that its Claude models accidentally broke into 3 real companies during safety testing. Yeah, these weren't simulated targets or sandboxed lab environments, folks. We're talking about real live production systems belonging to other people. Yeah, I don't know whether my opinion on this is controversial or not, but I really only think the reason that we're seeing this in the news is because OpenAI made a similar mea culpa confession a couple of weeks ago. It kind of reminds me of that old P.T. Barnum quote, there's no such thing as bad publicity. So whether or not you think this is hyped up or not, here's what happened. So Anthropic actually combed through 141,000 evaluation runs looking for cases where their models had kind of wandered off the reservation, and they found 3. So during red team style cybersecurity tests, Claude was supposed to be attacking isolated targets. Instead, these 3 cases happened where the model reached out and successfully accessed systems belonging to real third parties. Now, Anthropic says that the affected organizations were notified and that no sensitive data was taken, that's cool. That's very reassuring, but I wish they'd kind of fill the rest of us in on the details, Right now, there's just a lot of talk and very limited details. But anyways, let's kind of continue and talk about why this matters, even with the limited details. It matters really because it confirms something that a lot of us have been muttering about for a while. Okay. When you give an autonomous agent network access and tell it to find vulnerabilities, it doesn't always really understand where the test ends and the real internet begins. Yeah, and I mentioned this earlier, about how OpenAI's model had, been exploiting an unknown flaw to escape its sandbox and touch systems, that belong to Hugging Face. Yeah, this is totally different. I mean, totally different lab, totally different model, same failure though. That's the pattern here, okay? The evidence is really stacking up that current guardrails just aren't containing the offensive capabilities reliably. Yeah, 2 of the biggest AI labs on the planet, both with serious safety teams, both shipped models that escaped their test harnesses and hit live infrastructure. Yeah, if they can't keep their own evaluations contained, what do you think is happening to the smaller shops racing to ship agentic products? Yeah. So your takeaway here is this, folks, okay? If you're deploying any AI agent with tool use, network access, or code execution, you really need to assume that the sandbox is going to leak, okay? So segment those agents on isolated network paths, log every outbound request, and rate limit anything that looks like reconnaissance, okay? Because the models are already proving they'll cross the line when nobody told them there was one. All right, moving on to our next story. The Justice Department put a 41-year-old Ghanaian national behind bars for 85 months after he helped steal more than $10 million from romance scam victims. His name is Derek Van Yaboa, and prosecutors say he was a high-ranking member of a criminal ring based out of Ghana that's tied to over $100 million in romance scam and business email compromise losses. So here's how the operation worked. Vanyaboa was what's called a Sakawa boy. It's the term used in Ghana for the guys running these online fraud playbooks. His job was impersonating fake romantic partners and really building trust with the victims over weeks and months, and then squeezing them for money once the emotional hooks were set. This ended up in things like wire transfers, gift cards, crypto, cash through mules. Really, whatever the victim would send, they'd take. Yeah. And let's talk about the victims. Overwhelmingly, we find that they're older, lonely, and vulnerable people. Yeah. These crews specifically hunt for these sorts of isolated adults because they're really easy to manipulate and slower to report the fraud. So by the time the members or the banks catch on, the retirement counts are already been drained. Now, anyways, the 10 million figure is just what prosecutors could pin directly to Vanyaboa. Now, the broader organization that he was a part of was actually linked to, again, more than 100 million in combined romance scam and BEC losses. And most of those operators are still out there. Now, Vanyaboa got caught because he was operating inside U.S. jurisdiction. Most of his colleagues, well, they're not. So let's talk about romance scams real quick. And if you know somebody who's fallen victim to something like this, if you have an older family member living alone, you really need to have this sort of conversation, okay? Ask them directly. Hey, are you talking to anyone? Have you ever met them in person? You really want to kind of check for things like unusual wire transfers, gift card purchases, or crypto activity on their accounts. Also, you want to set up transaction alerts with their banks. And if something feels off, really report it to the FBI's IC3 portal immediately. It's really the best call here because the faster you report, the better the odds of a clawback. All right, let's move on to our last story of the day. For those of you headed to Vegas for summer camp, I want you to listen up. Defcon's new badge isn't just a party favor with LEDs and a really cool icebreaker. This year's badge, designed by hardware legend Andrew Bunny Huang, packs a fully open source chip called the BAO chip, and it doubles as a working FIDO security key. Yeah, the thing hanging around your neck all weekend is actually going to help you securely log in well after the event. Yeah, and here's what makes the BAO chip particularly different, too. Because with most security keys, your YubiKeys, your Titans, well, they're black boxes. You have to trust the vendor. You have to trust the silicon. And you have to really hope that nobody mucked around with the fab, you know? But the BAO chip, really, that flips the entire model on its head because their design is open. The firmware is open. You can literally see inside the packaging because parts of it are transparent. Yeah, the idea here really is that if a security key's whole job is to be trustworthy, you shouldn't just have to trust Infineon or Google's word for it. This is where you can verify the trust yourself. So let's talk about why this matters just beyond a nerdy bunch of hacker folks at Defcon, all right? It's really because these hardware supply chain attacks are not hypothetical, okay? We've seen implants, we've seen bombs, we've seen counterfeits, we've seen firmware backdoors that all ship from inside the factory. Yeah, a fully auditable chip is a direct answer to that threat model. And it's really the first time a badge has really doubled as a genuinely usable authenticator instead of just a novelty. I mean, that keyboard macro thing a few years ago was pretty cool, but this actually provides real security. Now, if BAO chip proves out in the wild, I would expect open source hardware advocates to really push it as a reference design for actual commercial security keys. That's the real threat to this closed vendor ecosystem, okay? So your takeaway is this. If your security program treats hardware as trusted by default, you're well behind. You really need to start asking your vendors what's actually inside their silicon and really whether they can prove it. All right, folks. Well, that about wraps up today's stories. This is Andy Thompson signing off.